The story begins in a world where the mastery of magic determines one's worth and status. A young man named Will finds himself in a rather peculiar situation. Despite being a student at a prestigious magical academy, Will possesses no talent for the arcane arts. While his classmates effortlessly conjure flames and cast spells, Will can only watch in awe and frustration, wondering if there's any hope for someone like him to succeed in a place that values magical prowess above all else. However, he refuses to let his lack of magical abilities define him. Determined to prove his worth, Will frequently ventures into treacherous dungeons, battling monsters and collecting praxis credits in hopes of advancing through the Academy's ranks, even if it means risking his life in the process. One fateful day, during a particularly embarrassing class demonstration, Will's inability to wield magic is laid bare for all to see. Called upon to conjure a simple flame using a catalyst, he trembles in fear, knowing deep down that failure is inevitable. As expected, not even a flicker of fire emerges, and the classroom erupts in laughter, the sound echoing in Will's ears like a cruel reminder of his shortcomings. The instructor, thoroughly disappointed, laments the fact that such an untalented student has no place in an academy renowned for producing powerful sages, stating that Will is beyond help and his only redeeming quality is his note-taking skills. To add insult to injury, a talented classmate named Cyan seizes the opportunity to mock Will, effortlessly conjuring an impressive flame and offering an insincere apology for helping him. The instructor, extinguishing the flame, emphasizes the absolute supremacy of magic in their world, stating that a student's rank is determined solely by their magical prowess and that mages are the true heroes of their time. Cyan's taunts continue after class as he belittles Will's efforts to collect praxis credits by defeating weak monsters in the dungeon, claiming that Will is merely scraping by and wasting his time. However, an unexpected ally emerges in the form of Colette, a kind-hearted honor student who fiercely defends Will, declaring him to be the hardest worker she knows. Shocked by her unwavering support, Cyan argues that hard work alone is not enough to become a Magia Vander, the most powerful and respected wizards in the land, and that Will stands no chance of achieving such a lofty goal. Colette consoles a dejected Will, reminding him of the legendary tale of 5 wizards who rose up against the celestial host, casting a seal over the sky and bringing peace to the world. She recounts the stories of a beautiful sunset that lies beyond the seal, a sight that Will and his childhood friend, Alferia, once dreamed of witnessing together as Magia Vanders. Will, touched by Colette's kind words, playfully flirts with her, stating that as long as he has a cute girl like her by his side, nothing else matters. Colette, flustered by his compliments, tries to maintain her composure, reminding herself of her noble lineage. Just then, Colette notices that Will has gone silent, lost in thought as he admires the beauty of the day. She takes the opportunity to share more about the history of the Magia Vanders and the world they live in. Long ago, the world was shrouded in darkness, and people weren't even aware of the sky's existence. The celestial host terrorized the land, but 5 brave wizards rose up to challenge them. These wizards, through their incredible power and determination, managed to drive back the invaders, casting a seal over the sky and ushering in an era of peace. The title of Magia Vander, bestowed upon only the strongest, has been passed down through the ages as a symbol of hope and protection. Alferia, a prodigy in her own right, had already achieved the coveted title of Magia Vander at a remarkably young age, becoming the youngest ever to do so. However, her ascension to the top tower meant leaving Will, her childhood friend and the one with whom she shared dreams of seeing the beautiful sunset beyond the sky behind. Despite the seemingly insurmountable odds, Will refuses to abandon the promise he made to Alferia, vowing to work tirelessly to stand beside her one day, even if it means enduring the ridicule and doubts of those around him. Professor Werkner, concerned for Will's safety, scolds him for his dangerous dungeon exploits, particularly his recent venture to the 7th floor. He explains the 3 curricula required for advancement: writing, spellwork, and praxis. While Will excels in praxis credits earned through his dungeon conquests, his inability to use magic renders him incapable of earning spellwork credits, making his dream of becoming a Magia Vander appear impossible. Werkner stresses that advancing through praxis alone is not feasible and suggests that Will focus on simply graduating from the academy, rather than chasing an unrealistic goal. With time running out and the threat of expulsion looming over him due to his failure to earn credits in the most recent exam, Will desperately searches for a monster worth the 4 credits he needs within the next 2 days. Professor Werkner, sympathetic to Will's plight, discreetly reveals information about a creature called a Baskerville on the dungeon's 6th floor, disguising his help as mere self-directed musings to avoid getting into trouble. Will, grateful for the professor's assistance, thanks him for the vital information. Unbeknownst to Will, Cyan overhears the conversation and hatches a sinister plan to eliminate his rival once and for all. As Will ventures into the dungeon, accompanied by his feline companion, he mentally prepares himself to face the Baskerville, having encountered one before and narrowly escaping its fiery breath. He reassures his worried cat friend that this time they'll be sure to avoid the monster's deadly flame, determined not to repeat the near-fatal mistake of their previous encounter. However, instead of the expected foe, he stumbles upon a far more terrifying beast, an evil sentinel. Cyan and his cronies, who had entered the dungeon to defeat the Baskerville before Will, find themselves at the mercy of the sentinel's immense power. Cyan's magic proves utterly ineffective, and he pleads for his life as the monster brutally slaughters one of his companions, leaving the others paralyzed with fear, their friend's blood dripping from the sentinel's fists as it lets out a bone-chilling roar. Will, alerted by the screams, rushes to the scene, demonstrating incredible speed and agility. Initially shocked to discover that the monster is an evil sentinel, a creature far beyond his experience and worth a staggering 10 credits, he quickly assesses the situation. Cyan, despite his best efforts, is unable to harm the beast, and Will realizes that the sentinel is in a league of its own. As Cyan continues his desperate assault, Will is faced with a moral dilemma. Should he save the person who has tormented him relentlessly, or let him face the consequences of his actions? Memories of Cyan's cruelty flood Will's mind, tempting him to abandon his bully to a grim fate. However, the words of his dear friend Alferia echo in his thoughts, reminding him of the kindness and bravery she always saw in him, even when he doubted himself. With renewed resolve, Will dons his battle glasses, a cherished gift from Alferia, and charges forward, declaring himself a lone sword ready to fight for what's right, even if it means saving someone who has caused him so much pain. Back at the academy, Professor Edward urgently informs Werkner of Cyan's unauthorized dungeon expedition. Werkner, initially disbelieving, is shocked to learn that the students have ventured to the 6th floor, a level of the dungeon known for its perilous challenges. However, his concern quickly transforms into relief upon realizing that Will is also on the same floor, expressing confidence in the young man's abilities and the knowledge that if anyone can handle the dangers of the 6th floor, it's Will. In the dungeon, Will engages the evil sentinel in a breathtaking display of combat prowess. He soars through the air, dodging the sentinel's vicious blows and the debris it hurls around the cave, his movements a blur of precision and grace. In a daring maneuver, Will manages to clamber onto the monster's back, his actions leaving Cyan and even the professors, who are observing the battle through a crystal ball, stunned and in awe of his capabilities. Werkner reveals that Will is a true outlier, possessing superhuman physical attributes and a keen strategic mind more than compensates for his lack of magical abilities. He has the strength of the most powerful warriors, the resilience of the toughest dwarves, and an unparalleled ability to analyze and adapt to his opponent's strategies after seeing them just once. As the sentinel unleashes a powerful beam attack, Will wields the monster's own giant sword against it, intercepting the beam with a mighty swing that sends shockwaves throughout the dungeon. With a final, lightning-fast slash that surpasses the speed of even the most advanced magical spells, Will cleaves through the beam and the evil sentinel itself, vanquishing the beast in a display of raw power and skill that leaves Cyan and the professors in utter disbelief. Upon returning to the academy, Will is greeted by a conflicted Werkner, who, despite his initial concerns, officially awards him the 10 credits he earned for defeating the evil sentinel, a feat that no other student, even those with the most impressive magical abilities, could have accomplished. If you've kept up with me this far, don't forget to subscribe and like the video. 5 years ago, Will experienced persecution from his peers, who mocked his inability to use magic. They questioned his presence at the academy, speculating that he was there only as a lure for Elfaria, and believed there was no further need for him since Elfaria had already become a Magi Evander. They were certain he would be expelled soon. One day, the headmaster, Cauldron Janop, summoned Will and Werkner to her office. She handed Will a knife and launched an array of spells at him. Will protected Werkner, deftly cutting through the spells one by one, much to Werkner's astonishment. The headmaster laughed and confirmed Will's enrollment at the academy, prompting Werkner to question her decision since Will couldn't use magic. Cauldron replied that it's exciting to see someone with talent for both sword and wand. Will asked if studying magic at the academy would allow him to climb the tower and eventually catch up to Elfaria. The headmaster told him that he must work hard and maintain an unwavering will to achieve this. After Will and Werkner left, the headmaster apologized to someone, lamenting their failure to look after Will and pondering the future. Professor Werkner informs the students that reaching the tower involves reaching the Upper Institute. This will mark their initial progress towards becoming a Magi Evander, and there are two methods for them to achieve that status. The initial option is to create a new form of sorcery, while the alternative is to accumulate 7,200 or higher credits at this educational institution. He explains that only a small number of students can successfully achieve the first option, so the majority concentrate on the second one. However, those enrolled in this course are far from reaching that standard, as they are not even competent enough to earn a diploma. He tells them that is the reason he will provide them with extra lessons. After the lesson is over, Will meets Colette outside. She wonders if the class was intense once more, and Will tells her that it was, consisting of continuous practice tests and magic drills. Colette realizes that Professor Werkner is really strict, and Will mentions that the professor is pretty kind to offer remedial lessons in the first place. Most professors would never do this. Colette thinks that this is especially true for Professor Edward, as she can't even imagine him giving remedial lessons. After that, they encounter Zion and his team. Observing as one of his followers, informs a group of students that Zion successfully overcame a malevolent sentinel. The students are taken aback by this information, as the lackey clarifies that he was stunned by the monster and upon regaining consciousness, found that Zion had already conquered it. The students understand that this will enhance Zion's assessment, and Zion believes he didn't defeat the monster, but he doesn't vocalize it. He then catches sight of Will walking by, which angers him. He halts Will by seizing his collar and inquires if he is playing games with him. Will remains silent, prompting Colette to inquire about Zion's intentions. Zion releases Will and he departs upset. Later on, Colette inquires if there was an issue between them, and Will reassures her that it was not significant. Professor Edward requesting the headmaster to remove Will from the academy, and the headmaster is surprised by the suddenness of the suggestion. She clarifies that she cannot dismiss him at the moment, because this marks his 6th and last year. Edward informs her that this is not the place for him because he is a fighter and not a wizard. He is determined to outshine mages by depending on his sword. The headmaster proceeds to remove Will's report. She observes that he consistently achieves high marks in writing and provides captivating insights in his reports. Even without mentioning his inability to use magic, he is almost too perfect to be real. Although he may not be able to become a Magi Evander, he could pursue a career as an artificer or a healer. The Academy aims to cultivate individuals of knowledge for the fated day, with unlimited potential. Edward comprehends everything, but he points out that the issue is that Will desires to be Magi Evander specifically, and nothing else. The headmaster acknowledges the issue and instructs him to personally assess Will in this situation. She states that she will trust Edward to determine his fate if he doesn't pass the test. Edward questions with a suspicious expression if she is certain of this. She claims to be, and Edward departs with a smile on his face. The headmaster smiles as he ponders what will occur when the Dark Viper Mage, the individual with the most knowledge about Magi Evander, evaluates Will. Colette uses her magic to unlock Will's locker so he can put his books in it. It is evident that this is where Will stores his sword, leading Colette to ponder if he is still actively hunting monsters in the dungeon. He states that he is in possession of the sword, but he is not allowed to use it on campus, and his roommate will prevent him from returning to the dorms. Colette recalls her roommate's name is Rosti and assumes they are close, but Will insists their relationship is normal. While in study hall, Will reads a book detailing the Battle of Garzaro. He is fully engaged in the book, discovering that the battle originated from dwarves from another realm being discontent with their excessive workload. Colette informs him that he already covered this topic in class and questions why he is revisiting it. The man says he is attempting to explore the subject more thoroughly, and she reassures him that there is no need as his writing abilities surpass hers. Will informs her that he needs to give his best effort to reach the Upper Institute, and he believes he understands the dwarves' emotions. He states that the strength of perseverance is stronger than any sorcery, and she questions if Professor Werkner informed him of this. He informs her that he did, and she observes that he has one white strand of hair. She ponders if he is pushing himself too hard and attempts to remove the hair for him, but he declines her help. Despite her desire to proceed, she is interrupted by the arrival of Professor Edward, who inquires about the situation before she can take any action. Colette states that they are simply studying, and Edward instructs Will to go to the spell hall with him immediately. The scene cuts to them at the spell hall, and Edward states that he will give Will some remedial classes as he can't bear to see him failing at spellwork. Will is a little suspicious to hear this, and Edward then attacks him with a warning shot. He mentions that Will's task is to land an attack on him, and he doesn't have the right to refuse. If he succeeds, he will award him 5 credits, and if he fails, he will be expelled. He then prepares a spell to attack him as he tells Will that someone without talent like him shouldn't even look upon magia Vanders. The scene then cuts to Werkner entering the headmaster's office, and he wonders why she has summoned him here. She tells him that she thought he should be aware of what's happening to Will, and she shows him both fighting Edward. Seeing this, he is worried and wonders what's going on. The headmaster tells him that Edward is testing Will right now, and Werkner is forbidden to intervene. She explains that she has granted Edward's request just as she granted his request to look after Will, and Edward wants to see if Will really has what it takes to be a magia of Vander. Werkner thinks that letting Edward test him is too cruel, as he is the man who almost became a magia evander. He did fail in the end, but he is an ascendant who made it to the top of the tower. Edward then attacks Will, and Will manages to dodge and keeps attacking him. Will barely manages to dodge all of his attacks, and he notices that Edward is using low-level magic. But despite this, his spells are still strong. Will then tries to kick him, but he can't get past the barrier he has erected around himself, and Edward manages to land a hit on him. Will manages to remain conscious even after this, and he thinks that Edward is casting too fast and is not even using an incantation. He can't find a single opening in his defense and wonders how he is supposed to land a hit on someone so strong. We see that his familiar Kiki is also a little injured and leaves the spell hall. Edward then tells Will that he has only been using 2 spells till now. The first one is the spell he is using to attack Will, and the second is the shield that he has cast around him. He plans to keep it this way, and he mentions that if they can't master 1,000 spells, they should just learn a single one, and that one spell can act as 1,000 arrows in their hands. He then multicasts the single spell he has been using till now and attacks Will, the barrage of them at once. Will gets hit by all of the spells but still survives, and he realizes that this is what a first-class mage can do. He desperately wishes that he had his sword with him. Meanwhile, we see that Colette is still in the locker room. She hopes that Will is all right with Professor Edward, and she wonders if Edward is torturing him. She gets embarrassed thinking about how Will would be screaming, and an injured Kiki comes there. Colette finds its wounds concerning, and Kiki points towards Will's locker. Colette wonders if something has happened to him, and she opens his locker to get his sword. Back at the spell hall, Edward informs Will that the magia of Vander represent the highest level of magic, and if Will cannot exceed his abilities, he will not be able to join their ranks. Then he tells Will that during the Battle of Garono, the idiotic dwarves rebelled with a force of 10,000, yet they were easily defeated by a lone mage. He places his foot on Will's head to prevent him from standing and advises him to acknowledge that the wand holds more power than the sword and to abandon his impractical aspirations. Will refuses to give up and insists on pursuing his goal of becoming a Maggiavander. He removes Edward's foot from his head and succeeds in standing up. Edward is amazed and curious as to what motivates him to join the Maggiavander, so he questions himself about his intentions. Edward is shocked to hear Will's determined declaration of love for the girl he loves. Will continues to elaborate that he is committed to honoring his promise to Elferia, while Edward is astonished that he is determined to achieve the highest level of magic for such a foolish motive. Will definitively declares that for him, this justification is sufficient to put forth his best effort, and he affirms that he will watch the sunset with Elferia from the tower's peak in the future. Next, Colette gives him his sword, and he gets ready to display all he can do to Edward. Edward then casts a spell at him, successfully cutting through it. Edward is surprised to discover that Will is wielding a Moria sword. Next, he gets ready to unleash a series of assaults, and Will is scared to confront them. He continues to tremble, fearing he will be scorched. Understanding this obstacle must be overcome to achieve the status of Maggiavander. He desires to escape if feasible, but acknowledges he can only progress, and is then attacked by Edward with rapid strikes. He successfully evades all of his strikes as he closes the gap between them, and he mentions that there was additional information regarding the Battle of Gorono. He clarifies that even though the mage had destroyed the dwarves, the dwarven general Gareth persevered. He successfully struck the mage once, forcing him to recognize his bravery and skill. He believes that during that moment, the sword was as powerful as the wand, and he shatters Edward's shield with just one blow. Next, he initiates an attack on him, leading Edward to also get ready to cast a spell. After their clash, it becomes apparent that he successfully left a mark on Edward. Edward reluctantly gives Will 5 credits and leaves, not pleased with the situation. Later, Colette ensures Will's well-being, but she observes that he is not okay, and the headmaster stops the broadcast of their altercation. Both she and Werkner were shocked to witness Will successfully delivering a strong enough blow to shatter Edward's barrier, leading the headmaster to believe that Will truly possesses an unyielding determination. At the edge of the Enchanted Academy dorms, Rosti prepares a meal for Will, wishing for his swift return.